Coming up on One Detroit, the growing debate on essential businesses in Michigan. Nolan Finley and Stephen Henderson weigh in. Plus, Wayne County Executive Warren Evans on possible budget cuts and tracking COVID-19 cases. Also coming up, the reality of news fatigue in a changing world and the impact of the pandemic on Black communities. I'm Christy McDonald, and One Detroit is coming up.
Support for this program provided by W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first. The Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929. The Dte Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public TV, among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving. We support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Visit dtefoundation.com to learn more.
Business Leaders for Michigan, dedicated to making Michigan a top 10 state for jobs, personal income, and a healthy economy. And thank you to these supporters. And viewers like you.
Hi there, and welcome to One Detroit. I'm Christy McDonald. I hope you've had a good week and you are staying healthy with your family. Here at Detroit Public Television, we have shifted into daily updates, new interviews, and perspective on the COVID-19 crisis. You can find it at onedetroitpbs.org. All right, also this week there has been a lot of debate and protests over the governor's stay-at-home order and what businesses are essential and what aren't. Coming up on the show, I catch up with Nolan Finley and Stephen Henderson. They'll take on the concerns. And then I talk with Wayne County Executive Warren Evans about precautions at nursing homes in the county and tracking cases. Plus, do you have news fatigue? The numbers behind what we're watching now. And then Michael Harriot from The Root on how COVID-19 is adversely impacting Black families and communities. That is all coming up on One Detroit. All right, so let's bring in Nolan Finley of the Detroit News, Stephen Henderson of American Black Journal. Hi, guys. How are you this week?
Doing the best we can.
Yeah, so I think everyone is talking about the protesters in Lansing on Wednesday and having these debates about essential businesses versus non-essential businesses and where we all really are in the process. I'm going to start with you on this, Nolan.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when the orders made sense, when people understood the rationale, when they were reasonable. She had the people of Michigan with her. I think people were trying to do their best to obey the orders. When they sort of became a little bit harder to explain and harder to defend, and when they became just a bit irrational, I think that's when she started losing people. People started asking questions. Why can't I have a one-person landscaping firm mow my lawn? Why can't I drive through a closed car wash? Why can't construction workers who can social distance get back to work? And she doesn't have good answers to those questions, particularly in light of other states, particularly Washington, which was hit hard and is allowing those sort of things. We're exceeding federal guidelines, and a lot of things just defy common sense. And I think it would really serve her well to look at what other states are doing and just adopt some common sense practices here. Lee Chatfield, the Speaker of the House, says, let's go to safe and not safe rather than essential and non-essential. It's what a lot of places are doing. And I think people would support her if she did that. I mean, people want to support her, I think.
Stephen?
Well, I mean, I think there is a reasonable conversation to be had about how you re-engage the economy, how you reopen things. That conversation is taking place. The governor is having that conversation with lots of different people around her and with people in the business community. What they're upset about is that her decision has been to err on the side of public health. And if you talk to anyone in public health right now, what they say is that the stay-at-home order that we have right now is the most practical and safest course. Now, will that be true in a month and a half? No one knows. And the governor's not saying that it won't be revisited in that time frame. In fact, it absolutely will. But to say sua sponte right now, well, we're through this, And it's
Nobody's saying that, Steve. Nobody's saying that. And public health takes a lot of forms. People out there losing their jobs, worried about how they're going to do this. There's a lot of stress.
All right, hang on.
A lot of stress. And nobody's saying
there is a lot of stress, but medically, if people start dying at a rapid rate, there's going to be a lot of stress there too.
No question about it. But there are federal guidelines. There are other states that are doing this differently, and some things she's doing are just indefensible.
Okay, go ahead, Stephen. Hang on, Nolan.
There's nothing that she's doing that's indefensible. It's all within her power. It's all.
Of course it is. But it doesn't make sense, Steve.
Hang on, Nolan. Go ahead.
Let me finish. It's all it's all under the guise of what public health experts are saying. I understand that it's in conflict with the business community and its priorities, but that's one of the things we're learning here right now is what people really value. And there is a difference. I mean, there are people who are saying that their ability to make money, the ability to have the economy churning is more important than saving every life that you can. And that's just not, I don't think she was elected to pursue that kind of agenda. Maybe Rick Snyder, if he were governor, would see it differently. He came at these things from a different standpoint too. We saw how that played out in a place like Flint, for instance. This is a different governor. This is a different time. The people of the state elected her to make these kinds of decisions she's making. The polls show 71% of Michiganders support what she's doing. So we're not talking about even a close call here. This is a tantrum being thrown. They supported
the initial orders. When she doubled down on them, she lost a lot of support. And I think it's unfair to say this is all about business. Now you let me talk, Steve. It's unfair to say it's all about business. It's all about people worried about making money. These are people who are losing their jobs and are worried about how they're going to maintain their households, how they're going to maintain their health insurance, how they're going to feed and take care of their families. This is not just people worried about profits, they're worried about their health. But if we have other places saying, look, if we can safely go back to work, we need to start doing that. And she's going in the other direction. And by the way, things aren't getting any better here compared to places like Washington and even California now is starting to loosen up a little and get the economy going. These are people at the bottom end of the economic scale who are getting hurt the most. And you can't discount what it's doing to their mental health and to their outlook on the future and whether they're going to be able to survive.
Yeah, mental health is something we haven't talked about yet. Go ahead, Stephen. You can respond.
No one is discounting the economic impact of this. Everybody is concerned about that. But at bottom, the damage that's being done to the economy can be repaired, right? I mean, no matter what it is. Hold on. Let me finish. You can always fix money. You can always go back and restart an economy once you're ready to do it. You can't resurrect the dead. You can't bring somebody back because they've contracted a virus that is so virulent and so spreading so fast that we can't control it. She is erring on the side of making sure that that doesn't happen. And the truth is that in terms of long term, if we don't do that, we will not be in this. The reason that Washington is able to do what it's doing is because it's on the other side of the curve.
But it never shut down this hard, Steve. It never shut down this hard. And yeah, you say you can restart the economy, but it's going to come at great human cost. I mean, there are a lot of people out there who are already suffering.
Both things are going to come at great human cost, and a lot of people are suffering out there. Guys, we're going to have to leave it there for right now this week. We'll check back in with you soon. I did talk to Wayne County Executive Warren Evans, and he was talking about making sure that the data is actually correct when they're talking about the deaths that they're having in the county, and also he's talking about the budget in the county. Take a listen.
In the last few days, it's interesting, the number of new cases has leveled off significantly, which is promising to look at. But the people who have been in bad shape in the hospital for longer periods of time, I think, are expiring at a rate that is a little scary. So to be able to have a place for the bodies to get through this and give the hospitals the room to continue to do what they're doing, is one of the really significant issues. One of the other ones is just getting accurate records so that when this is over, and God willing, it will be over and be over soon, we'll have the appropriate data to extrapolate from this. My not biggest fear, but one of my fears is that we lose information relative to the race of people, the information relative to what hospital they came from. I mean, all of that data is going to be really helpful for us to try to prepare if there's such a possible thing for the future. And we're getting better at the coordination to get it done, but it's still not perfect.
So let's go ahead and talk about that. What is your office doing to coordinate data that's happening county level, and then also coordinating it with the state, and who have you engaged into doing that?
Well, we've engaged the hospitals, we've engaged our health department, and I brought in some data folks to help extrapolate information. What I noticed early on was we would see information like 34% of the deaths were African American, 24% of the deaths, just as it's roundabout for certain days, were Caucasian, and then you'd have 30% race unknown. Well, you're never going to make any sense out of that until you figure out what's going on with the race unknown. And so oftentimes it was the appropriate box wasn't filled out when it was submitted, and you could go back into the case notes and extrapolate that, but in some cases you can't. And so, we're just trying to make sure that we do all the follow-up we can so that at the end of this, there's actually real data to plan for the future.
Let's talk a little bit about, I think the cases that people are watching are in the nursing homes, occurring in the nursing homes in Wayne County. What kind of communication have you had with the operators of some of the nursing homes in terms of either helping out the staff there with more PPE or more testing of residents of the nursing homes and the staff there as well?
Well, both of those are things that emergency preparedness, for example, with Wayne County has worked towards trying to get the PPEs necessary for first responders and all of those folks. And you kind of go down a checklist. I mean, we really didn't have a checklist necessarily for nursing homes, but clearly when we have enough inventory and when we had enough, we want to share it with everybody that needs it. So, that's one of the things. The other is our health department kind of giving some case follow-up and to look at nursing homes and just what protocols they have in place. What do they have in place to see if there's some way that we can assist them with social distancing issues and other sorts of things to the extent we can. So we're trying, and we know they're trying also.
Let's talk a little bit about the conversations that are already happening about, opening up the economy again. Do you think that we need to have those conversations? It's too early to have those conversations, or what would you like to see included, or what we have to take into consideration before we talk about that?
Well, I think the biggest thing is the issue of, and whether people want to admit it or not, they're balancing the need to get the economy going with the safety of people. And I don't think that's a balance. I think the science tells you when businesses can reopen, and not, I'm certainly a strong advocate for helping businesses, and we've been committed in a number of ways to doing that. But the reality is that we open too quick and start to have the numbers go up again. Actually, the long-term impact on business is going to be more significant than if we just kind of bite the inside of our lip and hold on until the healthcare professionals can give us a sign about going forward, and then it has to be staged. And so we should be planning to reopen now.
Ambassador, when did it happen?
When did what happen?
Remember when the media provided the blow-by-blow of the presidential impeachment?
You don't know who was in the meeting?
Which meeting are you referring to?
The meeting that never happened. Who was in it?
Seems so long ago. It's really been just a couple of months. And for many, so tiring, they got what's being called news fatigue.
Like an HR meeting convened in hell, the whole Ukraine impeachment saga.
People tuning out. Now with COVID-19, news consumption is way up.
I have hundreds of millions of people, #1 on Facebook. Did you know I was #1 on Facebook?
The news channels getting big ratings. So I talked to Alisa Shearer of Pew Research Center, a Washington, D.C. think tank considering the media in this time of crisis.
Yeah, the coronavirus outbreak is sort of an unprecedented news event, at least compared to what we've seen recently. So 57% of Americans say that they're following the outbreak very closely.
Senators, how say you?
That's well more than double the number in February when, according to Pew Research, just 24% were following the news closely back in the impeachment days.
Not guilty.
Pew also monitors news consumers by age group.
Another familiar pattern that we see is that young people are actually following news about the coronavirus a little bit less. So 42% of those 18 to 29 are saying that they're following it very closely, compared to 69% of those 65 and older. Again, that's something we see with a lot of different news topics.
How have we seen, I guess, news fatigue kind of go up and down as we've cycled through massive events, whether it was
Yes or no?
Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court, whether it was any kind of military intervention around the world? What have we seen in terms of patterning of up and down, of people going into the news and then pulling back out?
So in 2016, we asked people, this is sort of the first time we asked about the idea of maybe people are worn out by the news, and about 60% of people said specifically news about the 2016 election, that they were kind of worn out by the amount of news there is. We asked a similar question more generally in 2018 and 2019, and really large numbers in both years, even though in 2018 there wasn't a presidential election going on. About 2/3 of US adults in both of those years said that they were worn out by the amount of news there is these days.
Has there been kind of any criticism the way the media has covered this at all?
Actually, we asked how people thought the media in general were covering the coronavirus, and 70% said that they were doing at least somewhat well. And then those numbers are even higher when you ask people how they think their own sources are covering the coronavirus. So 80% of people, kind of mostly regardless of what source they're turning to, whether it's Fox News or the New York Times or MSNBC, say that their own news sources are covering the outbreak very or somewhat well.
So there's a loyalty to the source and they're sticking with it no matter what.
Yeah, definitely. One of the interesting things that we see is even though people are giving their media sources high ratings overall, there is a difference in the details that they're taking away from that coverage. So the perceptions of the virus can differ depending on which source people are turning to.
And now it's coronavirus.
Pew's latest inquiry into viewers' perceptions looks at the origin of the COVID-19 virus. Did it really come about naturally in a food market in Wuhan, China?
But there is also speculation that perhaps it did not originate there. Tell us what you know.
Pew found 37% of Fox News watchers believed COVID-19 came about naturally, which is true according to public health officials, while almost as many, 31%, thought it was created intentionally. Decidedly not true, although it was a theory discussed on that channel.
But we do know that we have to get to the bottom of that.
Over at MSNBC, 66%, almost twice as many, believed the virus occurred naturally.
What do you think in terms of you guys doing your questioning in the months to come, what this might mean big picture for news fatigue going into the election or coverage of this right now?
Yeah, so interest in coronavirus news is about twice as high or a little bit more than interest in, for example, news in the 2020 election that we saw in February. So it's definitely top of mind for people, and it will likely continue to be top of mind for people for quite some time. It makes sense that the interest is so high because we asked people if they were being affected by the coronavirus outbreak, and almost 9 in 10 of members of both parties said that their lives were being impacted. So this is kind of a bipartisan effect on people's lives.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how those numbers play out and the work that you guys continue to do. Alisa Shearer, thank you so much from the Pew Research Center for joining me, talking a little bit about our news coverage, news fatigue, and where we go from here. Be well, okay?
Thank you too, Christy.
You wrote an article recently called "Can Coronavirus Cure White Supremacy?" One of the lines that you said was, "The reaction to this new crisis reveals that we have always been aware that our economy didn't represent all of Americans and was never intended to guarantee prosperity for all." So what about this crisis has revealed those points?
Black people are disproportionately being affected by coronavirus. And a lot of people are associating that with lifestyle, because I think it's kind of malpractice to make that point without saying why they're affected. And a lot of it is because of economic reasons. A report from 2016 says Black people are twice as likely to live in a zip code that doesn't have a hospital or primary care physician. That's economics, right? That stems from the history of redlining. That stems from how we segregated Black neighborhoods throughout American history. Black people have 1/10 the wealth of white people. For every dollar a white person has, a Black person has a dime. And that affects medical care. Black people are more likely to be uninsured. All these are economic reasons why this pandemic is affecting Black America at disproportionate rates.
Are there any points in American history that you think might help us predict how all of this might actually play out, or maybe how we could get to a better outcome?
So the perfect example is the New Deal, right? So after the 1929 stock market crash and the Great Depression that followed, we had to dig ourselves out of a similar, if not worse, economic hole, right? So what did we do? First thing we did is we created the Tax Act of 1935. They called it the Soak the Wealthy tax. So they taxed, the highest margin of taxes was at 90% for anyone who made over $500,000. And they used those funds to create the American middle class. They created a federal minimum wage. They created what we call now Social Security. They created the Homeowners Loan Corporation that built suburbs. They gave white-owned businesses funds to supplement their income. And now Black people were excluded from the New Deal. For most of our history, Black people and brown people were excluded. So we can't discount that when we're rebuilding. So whose responsibility is it to build this new society? It's the people with the privilege. It's the people who have the money. It's the people who have historically enjoyed the resources and the privilege that whiteness affords, that the middle class has built off the Black backs, not just the backs, not just the labor. We always talk about labor, right? But when Black people were excluded from the New Deal, they were still using our tax money. They were still using the dollars that we earned, right? So that is an investment that we have put into America that we deserve to see some return on.
What message do you have for Black and brown people of America and America as a whole?
The message that I would say for Black and brown people is like, this is hard. But we've been through this before. Like our hands are weathered by the work that we've done and our ancestors have done. This is our test for our generation. But we know the previous generations that came before us have passed it, and we can pass it too. And as for America as a whole, now you see how interconnected we all are. You can't just isolate yourself. No man is an island, because the person that is 6 feet away from you is intertwined and inextricably joined to you, because we all share the air and the sunlight and this country and the policies that not only gave you what you have today, but they had to take it from someone. And the person that they took it from is breathing the same air you're breathing.
And that is going to do it for One Detroit. Thanks so much for joining us. I have some big news. One Detroit is growing. We are now moving to 2 nights a week. So you can see One Detroit Monday nights at 7:30 and on Thursday nights at 7:30. 2 new shows for you every single week. For more, you can just go to onedetroitpbs.org. All right, let's leave on a little bit of a lighter note and listen to some jazz. So let's head on over to the Dirty Dog Jazz Café and listen to the sounds of the Vincent Chandler Collective. I'll see you next time. Take care.
You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.
Support for this program provided by W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first. The Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Dte faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929. The Dte Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public TV, among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving. We support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Visit dtefoundation.com to learn more.
Business Leaders for Michigan, dedicated to making Michigan a top 10 state for jobs, personal income, and a healthy economy. And thank you to these supporters. And viewers like you.